Hello again. I'd like to introduce you to your next project. You're going to sketch a boat propeller. Now, in the past, using the old software Creo Parametric, the boat propeller was actually the final project. It was really difficult to do, but doable. It took a lot of, artistic work, really, to get it done. And Autodesk Inventor makes this actually quite easy. Easy enough to make this your next project. So I'm basically paraphrasing what this says on your screen. So just to finish that, we're going to introduce some new concepts using the extrude command in a way you've not used so far. We're going to introduce working planes. We'll put a couple of them in there so you can sketch from them or reuse them as reference points. We're going to use the coil command, which is basically how you can draw a spring. But it's interesting, you can do a spring and turn it 1/3 of a rotation, and you've basically got a propeller. At least one blade of it. The circular pattern, that'll get you your 3 blades. Of course, the thing's going to want to do 6 when you first start out. That'll look cool until we straighten it out. And the fillet command, which is something you'd use a lot if you're designing something in industry, because fillets are basically a way to soften sharp corners. And if you do any kind of drafting where the project is going to end up being injection molded, fillets are very beneficial for getting them out of the mold. You'll see then a lot of plastic products that are cheap. They basically fall out of the mold or just pushed out of the mold because of the way they're designed. And that explains a lot of why there's lots of soft, no sharp corners whenever they can help it. Okay, let's get started. So this is kind of what you're looking at. It's a boat propeller, very basic. We're not going to be fancy. We're not going to put a keyway in it. That's stuff you can do on your own. And we're not going to put an angle on the blade. I'll cover that in a how-to video because I'll actually draft a propeller a little different than this one's going to be. I'll show you something interesting about angling the rectangle you use to draft the blade profile. We'll get to that here in a bit. So that's where we start, and then I'll march you through all these commands as we go. So just to show you what it looks like, I'm going to hold shift, push down my wheel mouse, and I'm going to rotate it. So you can see the shaft is hollow, and there are 3 blades, of course, and you can see from the angles of them, they do a gradual sweep up. And they're rounded, which is what the fillet command does, because otherwise they'd be pretty square looking. In fact, they would look a lot like this. So, by the way, how did I do that? Especially, how did I put it back? Well, something about this model tree over here. There's a entry called end of part. And if you click and hold it with your left mouse button, like I'm doing right now, and you march it up the tree, you could go up to, like, say, the first entry or just below extrusion, for instance, and lift up. When you put that there, it hides everything below it, and this is a blessing. Say you want to do some work on something and it's buried because you can't see it because of all the stuff down here. You just move this end part up until you get to where you can see to work on things. Add that in there. It'll add it in right below, or it'll actually add it right in after this object, and then you can move it back down like this. Now, one of the things that's interesting is this extrusion is basically the hole right there. That actually could be moved, like I'm clicking and holding it. I could move that all the way up here. And I just moved the extrusion up. So now if I move my end of part up, there. If the extrusion was down at the very end, which it could be done at the end, now it's solid. So I wanted to show you about moving some of these objects. Now you can't always move them. They have to make sense. But you can move it. Like say, okay, I need the end of part down here at the bottom. Now I can move it up. You can see that blue line shows you where it's allowed to go, and like right there, it's not allowed to go in the work plane, but it is allowed to go below extrusion 1, like that. So that's how that can work. Now, of course, for this project, we are going to put it back down here because that's the way we did it. Otherwise, it won't match these instructions, and we want it to match, because the last thing you do is put that hole in it. So we'll keep it there. Okay, back to where we are. This will be the first step, making that shaft, which is this right here. So we'll do that first, and those are the dimensions. We want it 300 millimeters tall, and we want a diameter of 120 millimeters. Alright, let's do that. So we'll flip back over here, and I am going to start making a new sketch, new project. We'll stick with metric, and we'll create it. And here's the other thing I wanted to show you too that's kind of neat. Look down here at the bottom. I have a part 1 project, and I have a prop project. And that's telling me the file name and the location of it. I can click back and forth between these two. I can have more than one project open at the same time, and I can flip back and forth to them just by clicking on the bottom tabs here. That's handy because one of the things this program will let you do is you can include projects inside of other projects. And then if you need to make a change to one that's included in a bigger one, you just go back to that smaller one, make your change to it. And when you flip back to the bigger project, basically an assembly of smaller projects, they'll all change and replicate. It's a wonderful thing. So, we won't do that in this project though. Let's start out simple. As a reminder, we go back here, and here's the first thing we want to draft. So let's do that. And that is start, as always, with the 2D sketch, which part of it got cut off there. And we're going to start on the build plate plane. And if I expand origin and I hold my mouse on it, you can see the XZ plane is the one we're going to work on because it's got a blue square around it. Okay, of course it rotated up, and first thing I want to do is straighten it out so top is upright. And we know from a previous lesson that that makes all these commands work properly. Alright, first thing we want to do is draw a circle. So we will draw a circle right here at the center. And I just clicked one time. I'm moving this out. And I think it was 120 millimeters if I'm not mistaken. The beauty of this is I'm just going to left click, which just locks it in to whatever size it came out to. And I'm going to go back here and say, yep, 120. So I'll go back here and we're going to hit dimension. And we're going to touch the circle and left click. And we're going to move that down so we can see it better. And left click again to lock it in. And I'm going to left click it one more time to change it to 120. There, 120 millimeters. That's good for this sketch right here. So our first sketch is the circle. Now, of course, it's zoomed in too tight, so I'm just going to hit the little home button. Looks like a little house. And I'm even going to zoom it out a little bit because I want this to be, how tall? 300 millimeters. So I'll go back. 300 millimeters. So we have our sketch selected, and you can see it's in red. And you can see I'm going to go up to extrude, and I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to say 10 millimeters. Not enough. Let's change that to 300. And look at that. Shot it right up. Okay. So I'm going to pull this down a little bit. And if I were to do something creative, like go over to extrusion here and right click on it and hunt through these list of things and find the one that says show dimensions. There it is. There. Does that look familiar? It would if I rotated it, which I'm going to do now by holding shift and the wheel mouse. The mouse wheel. Okay. And by the way, that 0.00, that represents an angle. You can actually make it wider or narrower as it extrudes upwards. We left it 0, so it did neither. It stayed 120 millimeters at the top. But you could taper it with an extrude command, and that's kind of cool. Alright, so we have that now. The next thing is we're going to add 2 work planes. And we're going to put the first work plane 50 millimeters from the bottom, and the second one 50 millimeters from the top. What on earth is that? Well, let's show you. Okay, I'm going to turn off the dimensions. Well, I thought I did. Oh, if I just click away? No, okay. Aha, if you just click on it, it hides the dimensions. See that? You right click, say show dimensions, and it shows you the dimensions until you click on it in the model tree here. Or click away and then click on it, and then now they're gone. Just like magic. So, we were going to put a couple work planes in there. Let's start with the bottom one. Then I'm going to go up to here where it says plane. It's a work plane. Basically, a plane or a work plane is a drawing surface. You can draw on it. And that's exactly what we want to do. We want to draw on it. So, we will go to the plane command. I'm going to click on the down arrow part, and I'm going to go offset from plane. There's a whole bunch of ways you can add a plane to your sketch, to your project. And we're going to start with the offset from plane. It's the simplest one. And we're going to start from the bottom, and I'm just going to left click it. And now the arrow's pointing down, and it's saying 0 from the bottom. Well, I'm going to click and hold that arrow and push it up. Notice it's giving me a negative number. Okay. Well, being that's a negative number, apparently this must be 0, 0, and if I go downward, it's a positive number. Let's test that theory out. Yep. Going down makes it positive. Going up makes it negative. Is that backwards to this? It sure is. How about that? So, these are backwards. Isn't that great? Alright. Sometimes it's going to happen to you. That might be a quiz question, because you can't always believe your eyes on this. Okay. So, I really want it to be 50. Apparently I want it to be minus 50 millimeters. And you hit the little green check mark, and now it is in place. Same thing here. We want another one to be 50 millimeters from the top. Of course I see it says minus there, but that's not going to be the case here. So we'll click on that down arrow, do offset from plane, and we're going to choose the top of the cylinder, click on it, and we're going to drag it down a little bit. Oh, now it's a negative number again, minus 50, and we'll check mark it. Interesting, it's minus each way. Okay, I'll roll with that. So we minus 50 from the top of this, minus 50 from the bottom of this. I think it all depends on which way it assumes you're headed when you select it. And if you change its direction, which is what we did both times, it considers that a minus. All right. So we have those in place, and they are 50 millimeters from each end. Next, we're going to draw our profile of our propeller. It's a very long, skinny rectangle. And this right here is hard to see, but that is 8 millimeters. And this is 450 millimeters. All right. So 8 millimeters. Boy, get your magnifying glass out to see that. So we will make that 8 millimeters. Now, the other thing too is we have to draw it on a plane that bisects the center of that cylinder. Where will we find such a plane like that? How about in the model tree? There's one. There's another one. Let's go with the YZ plane. I'll just click on it. And in fact, I'm going to say visibility. We're going to make it so we can see it. Okay, so now that we have it selected, we can start a two-dimensional sketch right on it. And look at that, it rotated it for us. Now, don't be freaked out by this. This is the drawing plane, right? And you can stretch this out way out here if you want, or if it will let you. Okay. The thing here to know, see, I'm going to tip it a little bit. This drawing plane here, we'll flatten it back up again, just because, here, we'll center it up. If I draw a rectangle, I'm selecting a corner-to-corner rectangle, and I go down to that plane that I just had, you can see the green dot. Well, no, let's go up to where we should be. Here's that first plane we put in, and the yellow dot is choosing the plane, the first work plane that we put in, work plane 1, and the side of the cylinder. Now if I click it, I'm able to draw this now. And I can see I'm running out of room. So what I'm going to do is, while I'm in drawing mode, I'm just going to push down the mouse. Well, I'm going to push down the mouse wheel and slide it over to the right a little. I'm going to lift up. I'm still drawing. That's handy. So now I can get out to my 400 or so and my 8 millimeter high. We'll double check those numbers here. So I'm going to left click. Now you see what that plane did? It expanded. So it doesn't have to be underneath you all the way when you're sketching. You are sketching on it even though you don't see it back there. It was just only this far a minute ago. But now it's completely underneath what we just drew. Know that about planes. You don't have to have the plane even under any part of your sketch, as long as your sketch is in that plane per se. Yeah, I know what that sounds like. But you can see that plane adjusted itself to cover or be underneath what you just drew. Alright, so let's check our dimension. 450 by 8. Okay, 450 by 8. So we need to go to dimension. We need to touch this line, click on it, and lift up. Click it, and then click it again, and say 450 millimeters. Alright, good. Now, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel this way so we make it a little smaller so we can see it. In fact, I'm going to zoom in on that end. And I'm going to, dimension still chosen, so I'm going to touch the line, click on it, come out, click again, and click one more time and change it to 8 millimeters. Okay, a skinny long part, actually it's the beginning or the trailing edge of the propeller, which will get rounded here in a bit. So that's how we start. And the other thing we should do while we're here is this y-axis. we need to be able to see it so we can select it. Let's right click on it and let's make it visible. And where would that be? Oops, I'm in his skate. Got into something I shouldn't. We want the y-axis to be visible. Visibility right here. Okay, so now I see a little red color to it, so it should be visible. Yep, if I touch it, I can see it right there. It's that red line with the yellow dots in the top and bottom of it. Okay, very good. Let's finish our sketch. Don't forget to finish that sketch, because now, once you've finished it, and I'm going to slide this over a little bit, you can now go to your coil command. The coil command is basically what draws a spring. Okay. Oddly enough, a propeller is like a spring that only goes a third of the way around. And it's really a clever trick to use the coil, or the command used for drawing springs, to draw a propeller. I think it's amazing. So let's go ahead and get started on it. And we'll go back to our instructions here. And here's where we start. We'll choose the coil command, we'll choose our axis, and our profile will be that rectangle we just did. That's what profile is. Profile is the object that you want to mess with, that you want to rotate around. The axis is the axis that you want to spin that around. And we want to spin it around the y-axis, which goes right down the middle of that cylinder. And then the next part, tab, is the coil size. And we're going to go with the revolution and height setting. We're going to make it 200 millimeters high, which takes us up to that top plane right there. We're going to say revolve at 0.33, which is a third. We're not going to taper it. You can make this thinner as it goes, or thicker as it goes. Alright, so let's do that. We'll go back to our sketch, to our project. We'll choose sketch 2, which is the trailing edge of the propeller. We'll hit the coil command, and I'll bring it down so you can see it. There. So we're into coil. The profile is right here. It's already selected. But if it weren't, if I click on it and I look around, of course it's just automatically chosen. I can't I can't unchoose it. But if there were a bunch of sketches, it would make me choose which one I wanted. And since there's only one available, it defaulted to that because it's being nice to us, which is okay. The only thing I'm telling you is that sometimes it's a little confusing when it pre-selects the thing for you. Sometimes it's not always the one you want. So just be aware of that. And you change it by clicking on that arrow and then clicking on the one that you do want. But we will have to choose, and I'm clicking on it, the axis that we're going to rotate this thing around. The y-axis. The y-axis is the one that goes up and down. X-axis is the one that goes side to side. So we'll click on that, and look, it drew us a green circle, full 360 degrees, because if I go to coil size, it's making a 10 millimeter pitch, one turn around. Well, that's basically saying, here, I'll just rotate this up this way a little bit. Do you see that? Here we go. See that gap from the start to the finish of where it's projecting it will go? That's a 10 millimeter gap. That's what that 10 millimeter is. If I wanted it to be bigger, I would say something like 50 millimeters, and you can see it just grew. If I wanted it to spin 5 times around, there you go. There are 5 coils in there. If I wanted to go 2, there's 2. If I want to go 1, there's 1. If I want to go half, there's half. I want to go 0.33, which is a third, because I want 3 propellers and I don't want them running into each other. Okay? And the pitch, well, not so much pitch that I want. I want this end to go high enough to touch that plane, which is 200 millimeters away. And how I do that is, when I take a look at these instructions, I'm going to use something called revolution and height. 200 millimeters high, 1/3 of a turn. So let's see what that does. So, revolution and height. Height 10 millimeters is not enough. We need 200. And look what it did. See that? It brought it right up. And 0.33 is 1/3 of a turn. If I were to increase that to, like, say 20, it fits 20 of them within 200 millimeters. If I say 100, that's almost a solid. If I say 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, you see what it's doing? It's adding turns and making them tighter because it's keeping them to 200 millimeters high from down here, from where it starts. What if I did a 0.0125? That's almost a straight line. Almost. That would be a very, very small. How about 0.25, which is 1/4? Okay, you see that? That's a 1/4 turn, and it's pretty sharp, and you could make a 4-bladed propeller if you want it that way. Well, let's stick with our 0.33. 3333. Nah, just 0.33. That's how many times we want it to turn it. Now, if you get into playing with coil ends, we're going to keep them both natural. This is another discussion that's beyond the scope of this project. So, coil size, coil shape, looks good. It's a solid. Rotating that way. Now, if you wanted to make a left-hand prop, you would choose that. Okay. Okay, so we okay it, and look what we got. That is one vicious looking propeller. Almost looks like a fan blade to a fan. Well, what we need to do is soften up the edges. Otherwise, this one would never survive. And how we do that is, if you zoom in to that little spot right there, we need to push that in and make it what's called a fillet. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back out. And let's hide a few planes because it's kind of hard to see. So I'm just going to put my mouse on that edge, right click on it, and say visibility, which turns it off. I'm going to change and turn that plane off too. And why not? We don't really need this one anymore. So I'll turn its visibility off as well. I will keep the y-axis visible. There, isn't that easier to look at? Yeah, I love the shadows too. That's so cool. And you can see how it just kind of mathematically created this curve. Okay. Okay, so back on task. We are at this stage right here. That is our ugly looking propeller. Kind of like that. Yep, kind of like that. Let's make it better. Next step is a fillet. And we're going to start with the front edge, and we're going to make it a radius of 200 millimeters. And what does that mean? Well, let's turn it so we can see the front edge really well. And I'm going to put my mouse right at it and zoom in so I can see it clearly. And I am going to click on the fillet command. And a fillet command is really nothing more than it just rounds an edge. Rounds one or more edges or faces. It's a rounding command. Now, chamfer is one that just puts a solid angle on things, but fillet puts a round, soft edge on it. So I'm going to click fillet, and I'm going to choose the line that I want to round, which is this one right here. I'm going to click on it, and you can see it threw an arrow on it, and it's starting to round it already. I'm going to just rotate this. Whoop. I'm going to rotate this out so we can see it, what it's doing. And I'm going to change that 2 millimeters to 200. There, look what 200 did. It almost came right to that edge. Now you can use the mouse to move this around like that. In fact, I can move it to there and get almost 250. That looks nice too, by the way. But we are going to stick with 200 because that is what our assignment calls for. So let's stick with the plan. Make it 200. And we'll OK it. Okay, we're halfway there. So it's kind of looking like a racing prop, isn't it? Okay, now let's rotate it around. And again, I'm holding the shift key and I'm pushing down the mouse wheel. And then I can slide the mouse around to rotate that. And I'm not holding the shift key but holding the mouse wheel. I can slide it around like that. Just a reminder. So let's zoom in to that edge right there. Let's add another fillet, which is right here. And we'll click on it. Oh, it already has 200 millimeters from the last time we used it. Is that what we want it to be? Looks like we want 250 for the second one. Here was the first one. Here's the second one. 250. So we'll go ahead and click on it. And we'll zoom out so you can see what it's doing. And I'll slide it over. But we want 250. And you can see 250 really pulls it in. mm per millimeter, why not? Okay. So there we have, that's starting to look like a boat propeller. Except it needs more blades. Okay. This used to be an incredibly hard project in Creo, and I can't believe how nice it is in Inventor. So, we will now, I believe, we're going to make it 3. Yep, that's our next command. We're going to use the circular pattern command. Pretty simple command. You can see where you tell it placement. We want 3 UL, which means 3, and then 360 degrees, which means spin it all the way around. And of course, the other thing we'll have to do, the feature will probably, well, we will have to choose the features, and I'll show you what happens with that. And the other thing we'll have to input is the rotation axis, which is why I left the y-axis visible, because I knew we were going to use it again. Let's get to it. Okay, so if I go and I choose this one right here, circular pattern, I click on it. So the feature is the first thing we want to grab. And sometimes you have to be able to, see right here, it's not wanting to choose it. You have to click on it and then click on it enough times so that you can start choosing things. Now we'll start with the coil. But you notice when I chose coil, these are still sharp looking. So what if I did, oh yeah, and let's choose our rotation axis right away too. That would be that one right there, the y-axis. And of course, it defaults to 6. Look at it, it wants to put 6 blades in there. Well, let's change it to 3. Now, if that was all I chose off of this list here, and I forgot to include the 2 fillets, and I hit OK, look what it does. It used a pattern of just the coil, which is this right here, and it did not include the fillets, so of course they're not there. Well, that's wrong. I'm going to edit the feature, and it is already programmed for me to start choosing them. I'm going to hold the control button down this time and individually choose the fillets that I missed. So I've got both of those now. Now when I OK it, look at that. Interesting, huh? If for some reason you wanted to edit the feature and not include one of these fillets, like say that one in the middle, you could hold the control button down and click on it, and it will exclude it. Of course, that makes no sense, but I wanted to show you what it would do. So again, if you missed one, like I am missing one right now, just go back to circular pattern, edit the feature, hold the control button, and choose the missing object, and then OK. And don't forget 300 UL. Now, if the 360 degrees was 180, see what it does? It only goes halfway around. So I wanted to show you that too. Edit feature. We want the full 360 degrees. I could have typed it. And we want 3 blades, which is 3 UL. By the way, if I change that to a 4 and hit OK, I would get 4 blades that were designed for 3. They overlap each other. So that would be a 4-blade prop. That would be more of a fan blade for a house than it would be for a boat. So let's put this the way it should be then. Edit feature. We want it to be 3. We want 360 degrees. And all our fillets and coil are chosen. We're good. Excellent. Almost done. One thing left to do. We need to drill a hole right there. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. There's no hole to put that on a boat shaft. So this is a neat use of the extrude command. So we've done that. What we start out with the extrude command is if you draw a circle on top of that cylinder, and once you have that circle there, you can then extrude that circle downwards through the solid, and the secret is right here, this thing right here. That is a remove material option. Usually it's this one, which is to add material. This is the one you use to remove material. And sometimes Inventor's pretty smart when you change the direction. Sometimes it comes out with the direction going away from a solid. And what you want is it to go towards the solid. And when you change direction, a lot of times this will automatically be chosen for you. But if not, you can manually do it. So it looks like the diameter, let's see if I can zoom in on it. It looks like 12. And I believe that 12 is the distance. Oh, well, let's take a look at our other finished project. And let's modify the sketch. It is 12 millimeters between the inner circle and the outer circle. So we don't know the actual radius of the inner hole, but we do know that it is 12 millimeters thick. So that's handy to be able to flip back to your old sketch. So back to the one that we're working on. And that's what this was trying to show us, is 12 millimeters thick, that 12 right there. Okay, let's do it. Now I'll do this backwards to what we usually do. I'll choose my sketch command first. Now it's looking for what am I going to draw on, what am I going to draw on, you know, and that's when I go over here. And I now click on it, and it has rotated it so I can look straight down on it. I'm zooming in, and that is my drawing surface right there. And I want to put a circle on it. So we're going to put our circle right dead center. We're going to sketch it out some distance and click on it to lock it in. Then we're going to go up to dimension right away. And now this is the cool trick. When you touch this one and click on it, it wants to do the radius, or the diameter. But if you move your mouse to the outer circle and click on it again, now you're getting the distance between the two, which 20. So I'll click on it, which locks it in, click on it again, and now I can change it to 12 millimeters. And I hit enter. There's our 12 millimeters. Okay, so now we have a circle that we can do an extrude from. We have an enclosed shape. So we're going to hit finish the sketch, so we can now go to the 3D model tab and do an extrude. And let's hit the extrude command. And of course, because there's multiple ways of extruding, it's asking me to choose what do I want to extrude. Now if I were to just go this outer edge, I would get a hollow extrusion, and this would still be solid. But I want to go for this dead center, and I'm going to click on it. And of course you can see it did what I thought. It extrudes away from the solid. But I want it to go the other direction, which is this command right here, the one called flipped. So I'll click on flipped, and notice it went from join to cut. Cut is what removes material. Did it go far enough? Yes, it did. But what if it didn't? What if it only went about that far? And so you got like a partial solid there. Well, that's what these commands are for. This one here will cut to a surface. This one will cut all the way through. So if you click all the way through, and that's what it kind of defaulted to, it goes all the way through. But we're going to shorten it. Notice that went away. If I clicked on this one, 2, and then now it's asking me to select a face. What happened is it's not extruding anywhere at this moment. It's waiting for me to choose a surface to extrude up to and including. So if I were to choose this outer face right here, it'll extrude all the way through it. If there was an inner one somewhere in there and I wanted to extrude to that, and I clicked on it, that's as far as it would go. So that's what that does, is this one will extrude to whatever you click on the other side, and this one will just simply extrude all the way through. Sometimes you don't want to do that, so that is your choices. Okay, that looks good, so we'll OK it. And guess what? It looks like you're done. That's what we're looking for. Is that right there. Just like that. Okay. So, last part of this. Here is the point scale, the grading scale for this project. Being that you've done extrusions before, I've only just marked it for 5 points to do an extrude from a circle rather than a rectangle. The majority of the points are going to be using the coil command, because that's the trickiest part of this whole project. Getting all the measurements correct. Honestly, I think it's not that bad. But the first time you use this, it can be a little daunting, so I understand that. So I've given you the most points for getting the coil command correct. And the circular pattern is a pretty simple command. So the trick is like I say in that note, don't forget to include the fillets. And you can get them by holding Control and clicking on them. And then using the extrusion tool in a new way that you've not done is worth 20. And this whole project's worth 100. So good luck with this. And as always, get a hold of me if you have questions. And I can do a shared desktop either through Zoom, Teams, or I've got another program I use here too. It is TeamViewer, the one that hackers use when they want to rob people, unfortunately. It's a great tool. That's why they use it. So I can do a shared desktop environment with you through any of those 3 platforms. I just send you just hit me up with a message, say help, tell me when you want help, and we can figure out a schedule. And I can send you a link, and you just simply download a short little app and open it up, and then we can share your desktop. And that is, I think, the easiest way to learn all this stuff. And I can show you little tips and tricks that aren't in this assignment that are often handy to know. So good luck, and watch for the due dates. Remember, it's a midnight on Sunday night, not, Monday morning. Okay, and good luck. Thank you.